Man suspected of murdering 2-year-old boy is caught 5 years later wearing a wig. You can run, but you can't hide. Welcome to Behind the Crime, where true crime meets real life. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Let's uncover the truth, one case at a time. Now let's see today's story. It's summer in Columbus, Ohio. The year is 2020. The world feels unsteady. Families are stuck indoors under the weight of a pandemic. Children aren't in school. Parents are working odd hours. Life is quieter, but also more stressful. In the midst of it all, there's a young mother trying to balance her responsibilities. She's in her early 20s raising her little boy, Jamir. He's just 2 years old, still learning words, still toddling around with that wobble toddlers have. His whole world revolves around toys, snacks, and the comfort of his mom's arms. Friends would later describe Jamir as bright-eyed, curious. The kind of child who smiled easily, who could light up a room with just a laugh. For his mother, he was her pride, her purpose, the reason she kept pushing forward. But on one afternoon in June 2020, everything changed. That day, Jamir's mother left him in the care of her boyfriend, a 20-year-old man named Dioblis Williams. Williams wasn't Jamir's father, but he was the man in the house. He was supposed to watch over Jamir for a few hours, to make sure the boy was safe. Instead, just hours later, Williams would be calling 911. Williams told first responders the boy had drowned, that he'd been in the bathtub, left for just a few moments, and somehow slipped under the water. A horrible accident, or so it seemed. Paramedics rushed to the scene. They pulled Jamir's small body from the tub and worked frantically to revive him. The boy was rushed to the hospital, his mother trailing behind in disbelief and terror. Doctors did everything they could, but Jamir's heartbeat never returned. By that evening he was gone, just 2 years old. At first, the explanation seemed believable. Toddlers do drown. Tragically, it's one of the leading causes of accidental death in children that age. For a few moments, Jamir's mother thought she was living every parent's nightmare. A simple accident, one that steals a child in the blink of an eye. But as doctors and investigators looked closer, cracks appeared in Williams' story. There were bruises. On Jamir's stomach. On his tiny head. On his neck. Bruises that didn't match the story of a drowning. The coroner's office conducted an autopsy, and the results confirmed everyone's worst fears. Jamir Jones hadn't drowned. He had been beaten. Blunt force trauma to the abdomen. Injuries that were violent, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. This wasn't an accident. This was homicide. When police confronted Williams with the findings, he didn't stay to answer questions. He didn't grieve with the family. He didn't protest his innocence. Instead, he vanished. Within days of Jamir's death, Williams was gone. And so began a manhunt, one that would stretch across 5 years, through state lines, across social media, and into the shadows of communities where no one knew they were harboring a fugitive. For Jamir's family, the pain was unbearable. A 2-year-old with his whole life ahead of him, robbed of his chance to grow, to play, to live. And for his mother, the betrayal cut even deeper. The man she had trusted to protect her son was now accused of killing him. In the days after, Columbus police issued a warrant. Williams was charged with murder. His name and face were plastered across local news stations. The public was asked to call with tips. But silence followed. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. And Williams seemed to have disappeared off the face of the earth. This is where our story begins. A little boy gone too soon. A mother's life torn apart. A community demanding justice. And a suspect who thought he could slip away forever. But as we'll see, you can run and you can hide. For a while. But you can't hide forever. When Dioblis Williams slipped out of Columbus, Ohio in 2020, it wasn't just a suspect leaving town. It was a young man vanishing into the shadows, hoping to outrun the truth. Williams was only 20 years old then. No career. No real roots. And no obvious plan for what came next. But one thing was certain. He wasn't going to wait around to face a murder charge. For investigators, the clock began to tick. Every day Williams wasn't in custody was a day justice for Jamir Jones was delayed. Police canvassed neighborhoods, checked bus and train stations, and interviewed friends and family. But Williams had gone silent. No calls. No bank transactions. No sign of him. He had become a ghost. Here's the thing about fugitives. Most aren't masterminds. They don't have endless resources or sophisticated escape plans. What they do have is desperation. And desperation can be powerful. Some fugitives live under assumed names. Others couch hop, moving from city to city, staying just long enough to blend in before slipping away again. They avoid paper trails. They take cash jobs. And they try to erase themselves from the digital world. But Williams? He made a mistake. Despite trying to stay under the radar, he couldn't resist the pull of social media. Investigators later discovered that his Instagram activity was the breadcrumb trail he didn't mean to leave. Posts, likes, and digital pings suggested he was still active, and maybe, just maybe, that he was hiding out in Massachusetts. For U.S. Marshals, that was enough to keep him on the radar. Back in Ohio, the years without answers weighed heavy on Jamir's family. Imagine it, losing your 2-year-old son only to watch the man accused of killing him disappear, while the rest of the world moves on. Birthdays come and go. Holidays pass. And the one thing you want most, justice, feels like it may never arrive. Jamir's mother was left not only with grief, but with questions. Questions about how someone could just walk away. Questions about whether the system was failing her little boy. And those questions lingered. Meanwhile, the Marshals didn't give up. They don't. The U.S. Marshals Service is one of the oldest federal law enforcement agencies in America, and fugitive tracking is their specialty. They're relentless. They build databases of tips, track known associates, and share intelligence across state lines. To them, Williams wasn't just another fugitive. He was a suspected child killer. That put him high on the priority list. So, while Williams thought he had slipped through the cracks, the Marshals were watching. Waiting. Patient. By 2025, 5 years had passed. Williams had managed to keep moving, wearing disguises, living under the radar. But what he didn't know was that the walls were closing in. In Framingham, Massachusetts, a suburban city about 20 miles west of Boston, Williams blended into the background. Downtown streets bustled with commuters, students, and families. To the casual eye, he was just another face in the crowd. But behind the scenes, law enforcement had pieced together a lead strong enough to act on. On August 27, 2025, the U.S. Marshals Service coordinated with the Massachusetts State Police Violent Fugitive Apprehension Section. The mission: track down and capture Dioblis Williams. That morning, they held a briefing in Framingham. Officers gathered, reviewed the intel, and discussed how to spot their target. They knew Williams might be in disguise. They knew he could be dangerous. And among those in attendance was Officer Andrew Lewis. He didn't know it yet, but within hours he'd be the one to see what no one else did. Picture it, you're walking into a meeting. You've been told to look for a fugitive, someone who's been running for 5 years. You're scanning faces, trying to imagine what he might look like now. Older, thinner, maybe a beard, maybe a hat pulled low. What you're not expecting is a man in a wig. But that's exactly what Officer Lewis would see. By chance, or maybe by instinct, Lewis spotted 2 men walking downtown. One of them looked ordinary enough, but the other, there was something off. His hair didn't sit right. His face didn't match the look. And in that moment, Lewis knew. This wasn't just a man in a wig. This was the fugitive they had been hunting for half a decade. The net was about to close. August 27, 2025. Downtown Framingham, Massachusetts. It's just past 8:30 in the morning. The sidewalks are filling with commuters. Cars hum through intersections. Storefronts are opening. And in the middle of it all, one of America's most wanted fugitives is walking down the street. Officer Andrew Lewis has just left a briefing with U.S. Marshals and the Massachusetts State Police Violent Fugitive Apprehension Section. Their mission that day is clear. Find Dioblis Williams, the man accused of murdering a 2-year-old boy in Ohio 5 years earlier. As Lewis scans the crowd, his eyes land on 2 men. At first, nothing seems unusual. But then, something catches his attention. One of them is wearing a wig. It isn't a good wig either. The fit is wrong. The hairline sits strangely. It looks out of place. And that is enough. Lewis studies the man's face, his jawline, his build. And then it clicks. This isn't just a man in disguise. This is him. This is Williams. Lewis signals to the others. Officers move in. The Marshals confirm the identification. When they approach, Williams notices. He senses the net closing. And like he has for 5 years, he does the only thing he knows. He runs. Williams bolts across the street. Officers shout commands. Cars screech to a halt. Pedestrians scatter. And in his scramble to escape, something happens. The wig slips. It tumbles off his head and lands on the pavement. For a fugitive who spent 5 years hiding, 5 years living under disguises, it's the end. Because when that wig falls, the mask is gone. There's nothing left to hide behind. Williams stumbles. Officers close in. And this time he doesn't get away. He's handcuffed. Arrested. After half a decade on the run, Dioblis Williams is in custody. At the Framingham Police Department, Williams is booked. The charges are heavy: a Massachusetts straight warrant for fugitive from justice, and an Ohio warrant for murder. Deputy Chief Sean Riley puts it bluntly to reporters. "That person was in our community and wanted for a pretty horrific crime," he said. And acting U.S. Marshal Kevin Neal makes it even clearer by saying, "Today's arrest is a reminder that you can run but you can't hide." Mr. Williams thought he could evade arrest and accountability by hiding in Massachusetts. "I hope that today's arrest brings us one step closer to justice for a young child whose life ended tragically. For investigators, it's a moment of vindication. For Jamir's family, it's a moment of relief, bittersweet but powerful. Think about what this means. For 5 years, Williams lived with the weight of what happened in Columbus. Every time he looked over his shoulder, every time he changed his appearance, every time he logged into Instagram to get a taste of normal life, he risked exposure. And finally, exposure found him. Here's what we know. Williams had been living quietly in Massachusetts. Investigators believe he used disguises, wigs, perhaps different identities, to avoid detection. He slipped into the routines of everyday life trying to blend in, but his digital footprint betrayed him. Marshals tracked his online activity, narrowing down his location until they were confident he was in Framingham. From there, it was only a matter of time. And it was time Jamir's family had been waiting for. For Jamir's mother, the arrest was a long-awaited crack of light in years of darkness. She had buried her little boy in 2020, holding on to the hope that one day, the man accused of taking his life would be found. For half a decade, she lived with grief, with questions, and with the fear that maybe justice would never come. Now, at least there was an answer. Williams would face extradition to Ohio. He would stand in court, and he would hear the charge of murder read aloud. The community in Framingham was shaken too. To learn that a man wanted for such a crime had been walking among them, shopping in their stores, passing by their schools, was unsettling. But it was also a reminder of the reach of justice, even if it takes years. Even if the fugitive thinks he's safe. Because eventually, the truth catches up. On August 27, 2025, in a quiet Massachusetts city, a wig fell to the ground. And with it, the illusion of escape. After 5 years, the hunt was over. With Dioblis Williams in custody, the wheels of justice begin to turn. In Massachusetts, he faces arraignment on the fugitive warrant. From there, he'll be extradited to Ohio, where the charge that has haunted him for 5 years awaits: murder. For the prosecutors in Columbus, this case is more than paperwork. It's the reopening of a wound that never really healed. The file that sat on their shelves, waiting for the day when the suspect was no longer just a face on a wanted poster. And for Jamir's family, it is the first step toward answers. But here's the thing about justice. It doesn't bring Jamir back. It doesn't erase the pain of a mother who lost her son. It doesn't fill the empty chair at birthdays or the silence at Christmas or the gap in family photos. What it does is offer accountability. A chance to stand in court and hear the truth spoken out loud. A chance for a jury to weigh the evidence. A chance for Jamir's short life to be honored, not forgotten. And in crimes like these, crimes against children, that accountability matters. Because when a child is abused, when a child is killed, it's not just a tragedy for one family. It's a wound to the entire community. Think back to 2020. When the first call came in, when Williams claimed Jamir had drowned, for a moment, everyone thought it was just a terrible accident. But the autopsy told a different story. A darker story. A story of violence hidden in plain sight. It's why child abuse cases are so haunting. Because they often start in silence. Behind closed doors. In the trust of a home. And when the truth finally emerges, it's too late. Williams ran for 5 years. He wore disguises. He tried to disappear. But what acting U.S. Marshal Kevin Neal said after the arrest rings true. You can run but you can't hide. That phrase may sound cliché. But in this case it was a promise. Because the Marshals never stopped looking. The community never stopped remembering. And Jamir's family never stopped hoping. Cases like this remind us that justice can be slow. Sometimes unbearably slow. But slow doesn't mean gone. And when fugitives believe they've escaped, when they think they can bury the past under wigs and fake names, they underestimate something powerful: the persistence of those seeking justice. Jamir Jones only lived 2 years. He never made it to kindergarten. Never played his first soccer game. Never blew out 5 candles on a birthday cake. But his story matters. His life matters. And the pursuit of justice for him matters. Because when society seeks justice for its most vulnerable, for children who can't defend themselves, it sends a message. A message that says, even if you run, even if it takes years, even if the world forgets for a while, the truth will find you. As Williams awaits extradition to Ohio, his trial still lies ahead. The courts will decide his guilt. A jury will hear the evidence. But for now, one chapter has closed. The man who tried to hide behind a wig is no longer a shadow. He is in custody, facing the crime he is accused of committing. And for Jamir's family, that is a start. This is the story of a little boy who should still be here, of a family that refused to give up, and of a fugitive who thought he could outrun justice. But in the end, he couldn't. Thank you for staying through to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel now.